Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining today. I'm going to be, something's wrong here. Let's see. I'll do this later. Okay. One of my streams isn't working. Sorry about this. So, welcome, everyone. So good to see everybody. It's been a few weeks since I've been live with you. So good to be back. My name is Charlene Lee. And today I'm going to be talking about why we should be optimistic about AI. And so to get started, I would love for you to share why you're optimistic or pessimistic about the future of AI. And don't just say whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, but tell me why you're thinking in one direction versus the other. And this is a really interesting area because I have definitely been grouped into the area of AI optimists, as somebody who believes in the potential for good. But at the same time, I really do want to look and address and acknowledge the pessimism that's out there. So, I want to just go a little bit into why people are so pessimistic about AI, what's out there, and then talk about why I look at the world very differently and make the case for AI optimism. So let's get started. Again, please welcome. I would love for you to share where you're coming from so I can say hello to you. And then also why you are optimistic or pessimistic about what's going on with AI. So, a couple of things. I do have some slides here. Let me get to them. I can get to the right slide. And so here's what we're seeing about AI. Here are some quotes and headlines. So there's a good reason why people are pessimistic about AI because we keep seeing things like The Guardian saying 5 ways AI might destroy the world. Everyone on Earth could fall over dead in the same second. And then we have CNN saying, forget about the AI apocalypse. The real dangers are already here. And then we also have our good friend Elon Musk saying in an interview, there will come a point where no job is needed because AI will be able to do everything. So as you can imagine, this is this is what we're being bombarded with constantly. And when I go out and talk to organizations and their leaders, I ask them, how are you thinking about AI? Are you using it? They go, well, we hear it's all the good things, but it's really scary out there. Like it's too dangerous. I can't go out there and use it. It's really going to like hurt us and lots of other concerns from people. So I think things are really hard for people. And what I want to do today is talk about some of them. And so I want to just first of all welcome Jay for joining. Jay, thank you for so much for joining. Hello from Rockford, Illinois. You're feeling very positive, it sounds like. As a small business owner, it is saving me time and making me more productive. Thank goodness, Jay. I'm glad you're finding good results with this. And Jay and I go back a long ways. And again, I think we definitely both fall into the space of being tech optimists. And it's interesting, when I was at Forrester Research many, many years ago, we had a service called Technographics, and we divided people who were inherently pessimistic about AI. So we call them tech pessimists and tech optimists. And this is this is the way you come into thinking about technology. Are you optimistic about its prospects to make the world better, or are you looking at it as pessimistic? And people have this worldview. And so today I want to talk a bit more about just what's going on here. And I do want to share also that the slides you'll be able to see at this space at charlenely.com/AI optimism. So you can find some of the comments there, so the slides there. All right, so let me go on and just talk about the next summary, just to summarize really quickly. What are some of the key pessimism points? There's a lot of concern, first of all, around privacy. People are very concerned about how much these models are sucking up of our information. And then also the fact that it can go and just watch everything that we're doing and then make sense of it. And also, when we're putting information into these models, are they using it to train themselves? How do we know or don't know what's working or not? There are a lot of security risks, in particular that we could see that these could be used for cyber attacks, for example. And there's a lot of more sophisticated phishing going on. Anybody can be an email marketing genius at this point and send you tons of junk mail and make it sound like it's coming from a good friend, from your bank. So you don't need to even know English anymore. You can create these really good email phishing attacks that are highly personalized to each person. So that's a significant threat, especially around security and cybersecurity. We worry that there's inherent bias in these models. Who knows what's in them? We've seen some very visible ways where bias shows up in the results, and it's so easy to fool these models to come up with different things. So, how do we know what's inside of them? And then also the ethical issues. We don't know what's in there. So, how is it making decisions, and how are these decisions having an impact on us? And then a very big and valid concern around job displacement. How is AI coming to take our jobs? It's so clear. People talk about how efficient it is, how it automates everything. And on the other side of all that great technology productivity is a person. So is my job going to be taken away? And I hear this from so many people who are in the knowledge working space. In the same way that people who are in manufacturing are being automated out of their jobs, they're now saying, well, if AI can do things like take calls and I'm a call center person, or write legal briefs and I'm a paralegal, or diagnose patients if I'm a doctor, then what happens to me? And then there's also this general concern about the loss of basic human skills. If AI can do all the writing, then are we going to lose our ability to write? And just think about right now when you can get around with a GPS, with Google Maps or Apple Maps. Our ability to read maps is at an all-time low if it's ever been there in the first place. And then we have the existential risks. People like Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, Jim Simpson. There's so many people who talk about the existential risk of a super intelligent AI. That when we get artificial general intelligence, well, it's going to realize, of course, that it's smarter than us and is just going to put us out of business because we're a risk to ourselves. So there's a lot of concern out there, and I don't want to mitigate it because I think these are very, very real risks. And the key, I think, is to understand what they are and put them into perspective. And so the last thing I want to do is that I never want to say that all of this is just beautiful rainbows and unicorns and all roses. It's going to be great. AI is going to take care of all of these problems. The reality is, I so strongly believe in the ability for AI to make the world better, but also it comes with a lot of inherent risks. And so we need to be really opening our eyes to what those risks are and taking steps to mitigate them. And we talk about sort of again. My first book was the book Groundswell that talked about social media, and looking back, it was great in laying out all the opportunities, but I wish we had taken a closer look at also the downside of what could go wrong. Because while social media has produced a sea change in how we relate to each other and has really changed the balance of power of who holds it because of our ability to express our voices now. At the same time, it has led to a lot of problems in our world, in our society. So, a couple comments here from people. We have from Mike. Hello, Mike from Toronto. And he says AI is like any technology, it will degrade some areas of the economy, but will build new ones. I use AI daily in my role as a CRO, as does my team. Mike, I would love to hear from you about how you're using AI, and especially a CRO role, because I think it's one of the biggest possibilities. And I'll be talking about this next week. So, Mike, let's get in touch with each other. I would love to talk to you from my research. And Jay has another point here. You really have no choice but to be positive or to be left behind. So that's another great way of thinking about this is that change is inevitable. The future keeps moving forward. And so if you're going to just be purely pessimistic, it's not going to help you adapt and adjust to the world. And Maria, thank you for joining from Florida. She says, I'm very enthusiastic and positive about AI. Fantastic. I'm glad you're here to join us. I think this is a case of all of us optimists here hanging out today. So excited to have you. And I want to give you one very specific way to think about this optimism. It's this whole idea of being a realist optimist. And the idea here is that we need to temper being an optimist at the same time as being a realist. And I wrote about this in my last book, The Disruption Mindset, how the people who can thrive with disruption the most are the ones who have an optimistic view of what the future could look like and be very outcome oriented and believe in the future and can see the positive aspects of it, but can also realistically look at the challenges that lie ahead and be very pragmatic and be thinking about the risk and mitigating those risks. And so this is a very important mindset, I believe, in that if we're going to be successful as AI optimists, we actually need to be realist optimists and to be out there evangelizing and talking about AI and promoting the use of it and encouraging other people to use it, but also at the same time, acknowledge that there are these issues, these real and valid concerns about AI so that we don't just shove them under the carpet, but address them head on. Again, Jay confirms this that his biggest challenge is working with clients who are very concerned about privacy and IP issues. And Jay, we've talked quite a bit, and I've talked quite a bit in this live stream about how do you systematically, step by step, address those privacy issues, those IP issues, and make sure that the tools you are using, you can trust them. And I think that one of the best ways to be thinking about this is to use what I call the pyramid of trust. And this is something that we've been working with and have been testing with multiple groups. I've worked with everything from organizations setting up their responsible and ethical AI policies using this pyramid. I've worked with some ministries and governments and looking at regulations and using this as a foundation also for how they build the regulations. And the whole point here isn't to just mitigate the risk, it's also to take the steps to build trust in the AI systems that you're using. And I think this is such an important thing because in order for you to trust AI, to feel comfortable believing that it's going to be good, to do good, and it's going to be used for good and not for evil, that you have to have these tiers of trust in place. Think of them as a Maslow hierarchy of needs of trust for us to be able to use generative AI. So at the very bottom level, you have safety, security, and privacy. If those things are not there, nothing else matters. So how secure is your system? Are you sure that people there are safeguards in place? How do we guarantee the use of our information in these models? How do we make sure that people inside the organization are not sharing confidential information into these models? Again, there's a technology layer to all of these, and there's also a human layer, a people layer to every single layer of these tiers. We think about fairness as the next area. Where are we confident that the platforms we're using, the models we're using, are free of bias, or at least if they're again, I struggle to say free of bias because every single model has a bias, and it's very difficult because we all have different models of what is fair. So, what's interesting is having this discussion of what is fair? What does unbiased mean to you as an individual, as an organization, to us as a society? And fair is going to look very different in the United States versus Europe versus China. It's going to look different from company to company and person to person. So, fairness is very subjective, and therefore, it is very much something that needs to be worked out between the people who are using these tools, building these tools, and the people who will be benefiting from them. Quality and accuracy. How do we guarantee that information is that's coming out of these models is accurate, that is high quality? And again, definitions here really matter. So defining what quality means is a very, very important step there. Accountability is to make sure that if something goes wrong, you can figure out why it went wrong. So will these models be accountable? Will you be accountable when you make a decision with AI and someone goes, "Wait, how did you make that decision?" And we can go back and say, "Well, we use AI to generate this. This is how we put the inputs and how it came out. And these are the human processes that we use, and we can be accountable to any questions that may come up about how we make decisions." And then finally, transparency is really important because how do we be transparent about when AI is being used and when it's not? There may be some circumstances already today where using AI, for example, to write an email, not a big deal. But knowing that AI was being used to make candidate decisions, to identify whether you qualify for a loan, whether it's being used to diagnose a healthcare decision and to feed into that decision, these things we may want to disclose right now because if the person knew that AI was being used, they would want to know that AI was being used. And if it wasn't disclosed, it was disclosed later, trust would be eroded. So this whole trust pyramid is a way to think about not just mitigating risks, but how to build trust so that we can do the things that we want to do with AI to be able to take advantage of all the benefits that it has. All right. So, one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about, let me just get into my slides here if I can get to them, are just all the reasons why we can be optimistic about AI. So this is just a quick laundry list of some of the things. Again, I do believe that it will drive economic growth and productivity, partly through automation, partly through better customer experiences. But it just shows all the evidence is pointing to AI, especially in companies like Mike's, where you're finding new uses for AI to help you be more productive and drive growth. And we see also lots of changes happening in healthcare where we're using AI to identify new ways to treat uh, diseases, to come up with new compounds and to synthesize new compounds. We are enhancing the quality of life that we have every day. So if we think about the type of technologies that could help us just organize, make decisions, deal with the overload of information. I know that as a working parent, you are so overwhelmed by so many things, and AI could actually help identify and streamline many of those things. There are lots of environmental benefits too, as well. I know that the AI itself is notorious in terms of how much energy it's required, but I believe that over time, we're going to get more efficient chips, better technology, and that the cost of compute will come down so significantly that it will also help us find new ways to mitigate the impact of climate change on our world. Accessibility for people who have disabilities, being able to have a voice, literally, with AI to generate conversation in real time with people when you aren't able to express yourself in whatever way, and to be able to take in the world too as well. It has proven to be really interesting, even with robotics being able to help individuals with mobility challenges. We're seeing again some changes there. And then innovation and creativity. I have a musician in the family, and they use AI to help them work through lyrics when they're coming to a point. They use it to help their promotion. It's helping us be more creative by taking on some of the load. I know that in writing the book, I have AI do some of the heavy lifting in terms of rewriting some passages that just aren't phrased the right way, or helping me outline or think about things. It doesn't remove my creativity, but it actually enhances that. And then finally, if AI can give us better knowledge and access to information so that we have a fuller picture, we will be able to identify patterns and make better decisions. So that's just a quick overview, but I do want to dive into one particular concern that people have, and that is around tech jobs being, but technology taking jobs. And I like to say, and then I've heard other people say that it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's going to be somebody using AI that's going to take your job. So the thing that I say to people who are worried about AI taking their jobs, I'm like, get ahead of it. Learn how to use AI so that when AI is coming to change the way you do work, you're using it, you're becoming more valuable. And AI is adding value to the way that you create. And so that is the best job protection advice I can give to people. And the thing that I think is so important is to think about what technology actually does. So I want to show you some data. We think about ATMs as a job killer, and in fact, the data shows, and this is a chart that shows at the very top the number of tellers that are employed in banks and the number of ATMs. And you can see that ATMs increased significantly between 1990 and 2000, and yet the number of teller jobs stayed pretty steady and actually increased. And the reason for this is that as the cost of operating a bank went down with ATMs, banks realized they could open more branches. and each branch needs to have a person staffing it. And so there were no job losses. Now something that's not necessarily completely clear in here, which is the job of the bank teller changed. Instead of sitting there managing transactions, they are actually now acting more as advisors. And so their jobs definitely changed. It wasn't so much about handing out cash anymore because the ATM could do that. It was much more about handling the things that the ATM couldn't do: loan applications, checking about your credit line, looking into mortgages, getting advice about how to plan for retirement. These are higher skilled things that bank tellers didn't necessarily have to do. So over time, they had to be retrained into these new roles. Now, the advantages here of most technologies, like most technologies, they do not happen overnight. And so the thing when it comes to technology and job loss, it feels like things are changing a lot faster than they actually are. And we've seen in some of the latest data that enterprise organizations, businesses are not adapting AI as fast as some of the technology companies thought or hoped that they would. And so that's putting some pressure on some of the technology companies. But I'm not surprised because the sea change that's involved in adopting AI is significant. It is not just putting another technology in place, it's really about retraining people and changing the way that work is done inside a company. And that takes time. So, my belief is that we have this window of time identify places where jobs will be going away, that they will be no longer as relevant because we'll be starting to innovate very specific tasks. And when tasks are automated, jobs then change and jobs evolve. That has always been the case, always will be. And I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders in our society, in our organizations, in our world to be able to start thinking about what kind of training, what kind of world it's going to be. So, a couple other thoughts, and then I'll close out from here and see if there's any questions. Some of the ways to address some of these challenges of AI head on and to maintain that realist, optimist space, first of all, is to take advantage of the slower adoption to make sure that we're starting to do retraining. And some of the top HR people who I've been talking to have been taking this long term view and looking at workforce planning. And they're taking into account that AI is going to come in and is going to change our jobs. And that requires, again, that they have an AI strategy of how AI is going to be used inside the organization, how what their investments are going to be, where the opportunities are, and also the staffing, the skills required. Now, that's a long-term plan, and most organizations don't have anything that looks like that. But the few that do have a view of also how jobs are going to change, where they're going to need to hire, what skills are needed, and where places are going to have to be reinforced, and that those people are going to have to be taken care of. One thing that I think is very important is to remove more barriers to entrepreneurship. Right now in the United States, it is difficult to start a business. You have to get a business license, you have to get certifications. It is difficult if you want to build a substantial business and not just be a gig worker to really build a business. And so I would love for us to see more pathways for us to support entrepreneurship because it is so much easier now with these tools to be able to set up meaningful businesses that can drive a tremendous amount of growth with a fraction of the capital, the people, and the time that's been needed. And then finally, I do believe that even in with all these things, not everyone's going to be able to benefit. We will need to have a strong safety net to make sure that people who really need it, that it's there and accessible. It's there in some places and not in others. I think it could always be stronger. I'm sort of revealing sort of where my sentiments are around this politically. But I think it's also something that when I look at the horizon of AI, and how it's going to change. It is going to have a significant change for the better. And there will be some other consequences too, as well. And so, for us to feel comfortable moving forward with that, to have a strong safety net to catch people if they need it, is going to, for me at least, reassure me that we're going to be moving forward with all the speed that we can. So a couple comments here we have from Jay. Um, let's see. He asked a question. It just made a couple points here. He has a question. Did the changes in the bank teller's compensation, did it increase at all with all the changes? I don't have that data, and that's a really good question. My suspicion is that it went up because because the skills needed to actually be a bank advisor is so much more different than just doing transactional work. And so in some of the larger banks, you still see that stratification that you have people who just do the transaction work, handling the front desk and the telework, and then people who are advising. I'm sitting at those cool desks and talking to people. So I think, let's see, Jay also had this point that U.S. courts would disqualify legal brief that is deemed to use AI. And again, this is again about disclosures about when AI is being used or not. I think transparency is one of those really tricky areas because how much do you disclose and when do you disclose? And in fact, disclosing too much, TMI, too much information, may actually erode trust. So the courts are saying don't use AI to write the briefs, but it's also saying it's really hard to tell. I think the key thing the courts are saying is don't use AI to write briefs and just turn them in, assuming that they're right. Use AI to help you write briefs, make sure you're reviewing everything, and then you can turn it in. We've had dangers of people just taking things straight from AI and putting it into a brief without checking and realizing those briefs and those precedences don't actually exist. So AI is really good. It is a predictive model. It is probabilistic in its nature. So it is not accuracy and fact checking the way it is created today. But one thing I'll talk about in a future episode about AI agents, that there are ways for agents in AI to check itself, to do fact checking, literally to work with each other. All right. Um, let's see. Jay had a here is the AI answer to your question about compensation, Jay. So okay, so Jay has some thanks. I love the fact that the two Jays are working with each other to answer a question that I don't know the answer to. So thank you for posting that, Jay. Jay Bryant, for Jay James Johnson. And Daphne has this last comment. Fantastic to get this positive take on AI. Super like how I help people think about any change in their lives and work mindset is everything. Daphne, thank you so much for that because I think that's a great note to end on today because I do believe that is a mindset. And it is very difficult to change your mindset from being optimistic, from being pessimistic to being optimistic. So, again, I encourage you, again, I think I'm preaching to the choir here. As optimists, I encourage you to think about and put yourself in the shoes of someone who is pessimistic, understand their mindset, and help them see that these concerns are very real and how we can mitigate them, how we can build trust. And I think the best way to demonstrate that is to show them your personal trust and advice and thinking about how to use AI. All right, that's what I have for today. I'll be back next week. Yes, 2 weeks in a row for a change. And I'll be talking about the 3 ways to drive business value with generative AI. I get asked this all the time. What are the ways that you can create AI, create value with AI? Like I tell me, like lay it out for me. So I'm going to lay it out and hopefully the framework can also help you in making the case for how to use AI in our businesses and our organizations and our society. I'll see you next week and take care. I'll see you then. Bye.